our seminar today. Before we start, a few housekeeping issues. So for those of you who haven't been here before or unsure, so the toilets come back directly down the hall where we came in, and just to the left-hand side of the lifts. And so men's the furthest to the left, ladies more to the right. The event, unlike the event, I think, on fire, we go straight back down the hall and then we make our way down the steps to the right. So that's the case, but yeah. So that, with that out of the way, I'd like to, for those whom I haven't yet met, my name is Burton. I'm a director and senior financial planner at Carrick Aland, and I've been with the firm for 32.5 years now. And I've provided financial advice for approximately 27 of those years. And so Carrick Aland Wealth Planning is the financial planning arm of Carrick Aland. In addition to my other responsibilities, I'm an accredited aged care professional, which means I did a bit extra study and have learnt the rules and regulations, or as much as I can, because they're always changing. But yes, and so that's been useful, starting out helping out many of our clients in that space. And so that's covered both home care and residential aged care. Today's focus will be on the new rules that have just commenced on the 1st of November. As to how long the session will run, we'll aim for about an hour. At the Dolby session on Tuesday, I said about 50 minutes, and I think I went for about an hour and 15, so I'll try and pull things back a bit, but we want to make sure there's plenty of time for questions. And so what I'll do, well, the first half of today will be focusing on the home care changes. And so at the end of that, I'll break, and then so there'll be opportunity for questions on that. And then we'll move on to the residential aged care. And once that's gone through, then open up for questions. So hopefully that'll work as good as it can. And yeah, and of course the highlight of the afternoon is of course the delicious afternoon tea down the back, and there's tea and coffee on the side. So please hang around after that's finished, and yeah, I'd love to chat and just generally catch up. I said it was a good chance some people meet each other outside, which was great. So yeah, so let's get into it. So the usual disclaimer, anyone that's been to a seminar always there's a disclaimer. I guess one of the points I want to make that it is really important to remember that the information that we discuss today is just information, and it's very general in nature. And so obviously we can't take into account your own personal needs, goals, objectives, etc. One thing you will hear me say multiple times over is that the aged care system is extremely complex. There's a whole heap of information out there. I'm sure if anyone's kind of started the process, they'll probably agree that there's a lot of information in a lot of different places, a lot of well-meaning people that can look to help, but sometimes that can create extra confusion. So yeah, so I guess the purpose of today is to try and break down some of the information, try and put it in a bit of a logical order. We've given you a copy of the slides in the goodie bag. Also there's a feedback form in there as well at the end. We'd really appreciate taking a moment just to give us some good feedback, whether good or bad. And yeah, if there's any questions we can't answer, feel free to leave your details in the feedback form, and we can follow that up with you after today. So one of the key takeaways, other than that it is complex, is that planning ahead is really crucial. Being prepared for aged care means that it allows you to maximise the choices and also importantly minimise the stress, and it's often at the time where care is needed the most. So planning ahead, I guess, just like any types of life planning, if it's done well, then it enables you to achieve your goals, but also manage that transition from one life stage to the next. And so yeah, it really just makes life easier. Unfortunately, none of us can escape growing old. It's part of life, but at least if with some forward planning, we can hopefully help make that transition that little bit easier. And I'm sure many of you will have already seen, in amongst your own friend and family groups, that it's often that someone's health might be going okay, and then all of a sudden there's a sudden change, and whether that's a fall or some form of illness. And as we know, that often triggers off a set of things, and it's decisions, important decisions, have to be made quickly, and so it's always at a time where it's emotionally challenging for everyone. So once again, planning ahead, and also while people can make forward decisions, having those conversations with your family is super important. So as we all grow old, as I said, there's a whole heaps of different considerations we need to look at. An important one is both where we want to live and also how we will live there. This involves assessing care needs, the availability of support networks, and also financial implications. So I'm going to try my laser pointer here. I can get that to work. I might take turns. So on that, you'll see the blue boxes there, and so there's they refer to the three sort of main types of living arrangements. So the top left is the retirement communities, so that can be the traditional sort of retirement village, lend-lease type arrangements. And then of course you've got your own private home. On the other side of the coin, then you've got the residential care, which can be typically either a temporary solution, which is they call it respite, over here, see if that works. Respite, and then of course the permanent care is as the name suggests. So within each type of living, and we're going to break these areas down and give some more detail, but obviously whether you're in your own home or in a retirement style village, then you effectively you've got with some prior planning, you've got access to various areas of support, whether that be home care support that you've organised yourself, or it could be specialised service packages. The government boxes, the government subsidised in-home care, so there's the two main definitions, and this is probably the first of the terminologies today, but the CHSP stands for the Commonwealth Home Support Program, and so that's a very entry-level home care package. And then the new or the main levels are what they call a supported home package. They used to call it just home care, and from the 1st of November it's now called supported home. So obviously, there's a whole heap of different options. What's going to be suitable for one person is not going to suit the next person, but it's really about starting with an awareness of what your options are, and then from there you can start to customise it. Okay. So I'm just going to touch also on the distinction between the retirement village and residential care. Touched on it originally, but just wanted to give a little bit more detail, because we find it's actually often an area where people get a bit confused. They say, often gets lumped as it's all care, but there are some important distinctions. So if we start on our left, the retirement village. So typically they'll generally involve some form of purchasing, whether that's a lease or a license to occupy a unit, and that will generally come with an agreed lump sum upfront lump sum. Typically when you leave those types of arrangements, a lot of them will charge some form of deferred management fee, which is an exit fee in effect, and this can range between about 20% up to 35% typically of what you put in initially. Now importantly, as we say there, the funds are not government guaranteed, so technically if that provider of that retirement village got themselves into financial trouble, then there's no guarantee that your money is safeguarded, as opposed to the residential care, which is in most cases, and this is another introduction of terminology, so the RAD is a refundable accommodation deposit, and so in residential care you'll be faced with one of these, and so providing that it is an approved provider, then the federal government actually backs the capital there, so you've got the security of capital. I guess the other, as I touched on earlier, one of the differences is the independent living. You can access, just like living at home, you can also access some home care, supported home type services. Some of the villages will have their own home care offerings. Then you're generally free to bring in your own at your choice. Whereas in the residential care, then it's a fully supported living, so 24-hour care, round-the-clock care is all provided by the nursing home or the residential care facility. So that's a quick overview of sort of, I guess, the system as a whole. Let's now dive into a bit more of a breakup, starting with the supported home, and particularly focusing on the new rules that commenced on the 1st of November. Were meant to kick off on the 1st of July. The government at the last minute delayed them to the 1st of November, pretty much because they recognised that the home care providers particularly were really struggling with the changes, and so that supposedly brought them a few extra months. Although having said that, I've had some discussions with people in the home care industry and even now themselves, and then also the government, Services Australia are still struggling with it. So whether it started in July or November, I think that we've got to expect some hiccups with it, because it is a really big change. And I'm sure, as I said, some of you in your room might have already had some experience with the old home care system. So you might be. I haven't had too many clients that have necessarily given that favourable of an experience. It does happen from time to time, but it's quite common for things not to go to plan. So I guess when you're dealing with sort of government departments, etc., then you've got to expect that to an extent. Okay, so let's get into it. Obviously, the reason why someone would look at supported home is really, it's often, I guess, at the top level, the intention is to stay in your home as long as possible, and that's good for everyone. That's good for the government. That's good for for the individuals. It's good for families generally, and so it makes sense. So, but it generally comes at a point in time where where that independent living is just not quite enough, and so they just need some extra assistance. So, when we look at what that really means, there's a whole heap of different definitions or different services, but the typical ones, your meals, your cleaning, transport assistance, just helping out with your home, whether that's some help in the garden, fixing, replacing the light bulb, a few different things like that, just general daily tasks. And so I guess and look, this is a big consideration when someone's at that point where they say, okay, I need some extra help, I don't really know where to start. Then I guess it's about looking at some of the key considerations of who the person's living with at the moment. So in a couple's situation, then if one member of the couple's healthier than the other, then they'll lean towards the healthy one to help out. And that'll also have some impact when they go to get an assessment done. So whereas if someone living on their own, doesn't have that immediate help. So so there's a range of different considerations, scenarios. Whether the person getting assessed has got family, friend help close by is also going to impact as well. The financial considerations come into play. Where the home's location is. We've got quite a few clients getting to that stage, starting to need some form of supported home care, living out on the property still, and so that makes it hard because only certain providers will travel, or some might have a distance and they'll only go so far, and if they're 1 kilometre outside that radius, then they're missing out. So there's a lot of considerations, and sometimes I guess that that might trigger some difficult conversations. That people need to look further about where they might end up living. So I think this slide is a really key one in that it really, both from what it's called, don't wait for the crisis, but also recognising from start to finish, it's a long, drawn-out process, anywhere up to we're getting some reactions suggest that they can relate to that. And you know, we've heard, and these are all averages, so yeah, there's, you know, some people get lucky and it might be quicker, others don't have that same luck and it drags out. So, but you know, to give you an idea, the fact that it is the average time from start to finish is 18 months. You know, it is very much a consideration. You know, you hear governments are, you know, you'll hear on the news that, you know, they're putting so many thousand extra packages in, which is fantastic. But then, of course, you've still got to have the people on the ground to provide that support, and that's certainly an ongoing challenge. But yeah, so regardless of when you start, I've got a client actually in India, you know, works in NDIS, and she basically tells people in her circles that, you know, as soon as you turn 65, you should actually contact my aged care to at least get a number. You know, so you're at the very least you're in the system. Of course, that only gets you so far, but then, you know, then the next step is that assessment, and that, yeah. So getting the assessment, that can be done through myagedcare.gov.au. That can be done either over the phone or face to face. You know, generally speaking, it's better if, you know, possibly if you can get a face to face, because, yeah, people, you know, the person doing the assessment can't always get the same level of detail when they're just discussing things on the phone. Yeah, so then that ACAT assessment is done. They go through a series of questions. It can take between, I've seen, you know, variances between half an hour, maybe an hour and an hour and a half. I've heard. You know, so it can be quite a few questions asked. But then from that, then you go away, and then you basically wait till you get whether you become eligible, whether you signed a package. But then even when the package is assigned, then you've got to wait, you know, for it to be approved. So yeah, more wait times. And then once it's formally accepted, then you've got 56 days to choose a home care provider. So what we say to people is that, you know, if you know, during that sort of waiting period, you know, it makes sense to do some homework, you know, do some scouting around to see, you know, which provider that you'd be comfortable in using. And so once so when you've got the green light, then you can, you know, start to engage them straight away. Okay, so I'm going to spend a bit of time now on the financial side of things, so how much you contribute, and this is actually one of the bigger changes to the old home care to this new supported home. So they've pretty much completely upended the way they used to do the financial means calculation, and, you know, to where it is today. So, but from the 1st of November, there's now 8 levels of supported home, so level 1 through to level 8. We've rounded these numbers. They've actually, the actual numbers are slightly different. There's some indexation, but these were the numbers when they were first announced, and it's easier to work with round numbers than odd numbers. But yeah, so broadly speaking, and for those of you that were in, you know, or knew of the old home care system, that used to be a level 1 through to level 4, and so in effect you've got double the levels now. And at the very high end, the level 8 is actually a package worth 78,000. Compare that to a level 4 under the old system, which was about 63,000. So, you know, for people with the highest level of needs, then there's going to be more money to be assigned. Again, just talking to some other people in the home care sort of system, yeah, they've suggested that, you know, for someone to get a level 8 package, they have to be, you know, really, a lot of, you know, some serious needs. So, they were suggesting that, yeah, there's probably may not be that many people that would get that level 8, but I guess time will tell as the assessments get rolled out. So the budget that you're giving, so depending on which level you get assigned, then one of the changes, and I think this is a positive change from the 1st of November, is that regardless of which provider you now use, then they can only charge a maximum of 10% a care package fee. Whereas previously, depending on your provider, you know, there was some out there a few years ago were actually charging north of 40-45% of the package, you know, which was quite astounding. More recently now, I've still seen some were as high as 35%. So the fact that they can only charge a 10% off the top is certainly a positive change. There is a bit of a caveat on that, and I'll talk to you a bit more about this because as we're seeing now, some of the price lists for the new providers have been released, and they're quite staggering to say the least. To give you an example, if you had to get someone in on a public holiday to whether it's doing your gardening, or there's a definition they call assistive technology, which might be just helping someone get around to be a bit more mobile. And so the hourly rate on this provider, who I won't name, but it's $587 an hour on a public holiday. So, and I kid you not. And so it's that, and obviously different days of the week, there's a different price. So it is the actual budgeting side of the home care. The supported home is going to become all the more important because you'll have an amount to work with, and then it's up to you. And I think working with advisors that can help, but also the provider to sort of get the best bang for your buck. So the three areas: the clinical care, and so the good news there is that regardless of your financial status, whether you're a full-age pensioner, whether you're self-funded, or whether you're somewhere in the middle, you might be a part-age pensioner, or actually have the Commonwealth Home Support, Commonwealth Seniors Health Card, sorry. So if you're a self-funded retiree, but if you've got a Commonwealth Seniors Health Card, then what you pay can actually be a bit less than a full self-funded person without a Commonwealth Seniors Health Card. And so the good news for clinical care is no one will pay, no client won't pay anything towards that. And so that covers pretty much everything you can imagine. That's professional care, whether that's nursing care, allied health, things like podiatry, physio, exercise, physio, etc. And it's pretty well, as has been explained to me, if the GP refers you, or even an allied health professional, refers you to some other professional care, then that will normally come under clinical care. The second category is called independent support, and so that could be things such as personal care, but it's not delivered by a professional, and it could also cover things like transportation, social support, and so that's kind of the middle rung. And you'll see here how much you'll pay will depend on your financial status, effectively. So again, a full pensioner will only pay 5% of the package that's assigned to the independent support, whereas a self-funded person can pay up to 50%. So once again, and we'll go through an example just to sort of highlight how this works in reality. The final category, the everyday living, will cover pretty much everything else that you can imagine. Think just domestic assistance, home maintenance, help in the garden, cleaning, etc. And so that everything that's not sort of covered by the other two categories should come under that. But interestingly here, so full pensioners will pay 17.5% of that bucket. The part pensioners between 17.5% and 80%, and the self-funders will actually pay up to 80%. So, and again, there's quite a variance. How much you ultimately contribute will be assessed by Centrelink, now called Services Australia, and it'll be based on a means test. So they'll look at your financial assets, your income, and then they'll send you a determination based on that. Interestingly, if of that package, so it'll actually be that annual package that we've got on the screen there, that will actually be divided by 4, and that will form your quarterly budget. So each quarter you'll have a quarter of that total annual package to work with. Another change that is probably not such a positive one, but you can probably see where it came from, is that Previously, there was, if you weren't using your package, you could roll it over, carry it forward. Whereas now they're going to put some caps on that. So at the end of the quarter, you can only roll over the greater of $1,000 or 10% of that package. And I'll put some numbers to that as we go through the example. And so, so if you happen to use up your entire budget for that quarter and you don't have anything to roll over, then you've effectively got to pay for stuff yourself until the new quarter. So it's going to, again, that sort of budget, that need for good budgeting is going to become all the more important. Right.